welcome to the Digital Days Gaming Podcast. I am your host, Michael Swick, and this week I am joined by Chris Penwell.
Hello, how's it going?
Chris, thank you for joining us this week. You were filling in for Dave because Dave is opening a store. So Dave's going to be missing for probably the next 2 weeks. So we're either going to have people fill in randomly for Dave throughout the next couple weeks, or I might do a solo podcast, or I might take a week off. But this week we do have someone. We're recording on the eve of July 4th, so you might hear explosions behind me. Chris, you are an Englishman in Canada, so I don't think we have to worry too much about fireworks right now.
Not on my probably, yeah. Okay. There might be some Americans there, I don't know, but...
Are you in a part of Canada that is sending smoke to my way? Because,
no.
Man, we were covered in smoke. Okay.
I lived in Edmonton for a little while, and yeah, that smoke was horrible when I was there in Alberta. Oh my goodness, yeah, so... I hope it gets better for you soon.
It did, but then we flooded. Like, we immediately went from, like, we cannot go outside because the air quality is too bad, to immediately, like, oh, everything's underwater. So, pure chaos. I'm going to be a little chippy this episode, probably, because I'm very exhausted. But we do have a pretty packed show. Me and Chris have a couple games that we are in the process of reviewing. So we'll get our opinions on some games that we're both playing, and then some other stuff that Chris is working on. Chris, let's just get your social stuff at the beginning. So if you want to hit us with where we can find you, in case people don't wait to the end.
You can find me at Penwell Writes on Twitter. I am writing for Destructoid, GG Recon, and The Outer Haven, so you can read my stuff there. I'm just a freelance writer. I'm not actually part of the stuff, but, you know, anyway. I love writing for those places. It's always a lot of fun, and it feels great to actually make it a job. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't... Yeah, so...
Are you on Twitter while it's burning to the ground? Speaking of fires.
I'm on Twitter. I love Twitter. So, I'm not a pictures guy, so Instagram isn't for me. And, like, I can't get access to those other websites because, like, you need to be on a wait list. So I'm like, yay, I'm just going to experience the downfall of Twitter.
All right, so we can find you on Twitter sharing your articles, and then also sharing Kingdom Hearts opinions as they come.
Yes. It's a bit dry right now, so like
it's very dry.
More information, so I don't know. I think after Rebirth comes out, we'll start to hear more, like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
I think so. We know that team here. If people that have not heard Chris before, he's been on this podcast on some special episodes. He was on the first and only Safe to Spoil for Enslaved, right. Odyssey to the West, and then also
do something like that again. That was fun.
Yeah, we definitely do. We need to find a random old game, and then you were also on the PlayStation All Stars building the roster for a sequel.
Love that episode. I loved recording that. It was a lot of fun, and if Sony is making like these multiplayer kind of like games as a service games, can you at least give us All Stars 2, please?
What if it's a serious game like a Street Fighter?
I'd take that too. I think it would make more sense as that actually. Well,
we can hope it's one of the 10 games coming that are going to be live service games. Just give us one. If they're all third-person, first-person shooters, I'm going to be very bummed.
Should not be all shooters, yeah. Nah.
It's going to be all
even
shooters.
A MOBA, like a PlayStation MOBA would be cool.
It's going to be all shooters. You know it's going to be all shooters.
I know.
Let's hop into the news real quick. Just a couple stories before we get into playing and watching. The first one, Chris's favorite topic, AI. Valve last week reportedly took down multiple games that were using AI art. They did this quietly. Some developers are like, hey, my game went down, and people investigated and found out Valve was removing AI stuff. Valve put out a pretty long quote, but the important part of the quote is, with them talking about AI, is we know it is a constantly evolving tech, and our goal is not to discourage the use of it on Steam. Instead, we're working through how to integrate it into our already existing review policies. Stated plainly, our review process is a reflection of our current copyright law and policies, not an added layer of our opinion. As these laws and policies evolve over time, so will our process. Chris, I think that is very important because people were high-fiving Valve because they're like, they don't like AI art. But this quote very much is just like, legally, we don't like it, but we will like it in the future once those laws get adjusted. So, Chris...
Like, it's a very new tech, right? So it's still waiting on, like, proper laws around the world around the use of this. Like, for example, in Los Angeles right now, there's a strike from the writers' unions for like films and stuff, and part of the agreements they're trying to make is like not to include AI in scripts, as far as I know. So I don't know, it's a very scary thing for a lot of people, I think, and we're just trying to adjust to this new tech. But for me, I feel like as games are getting bigger and bigger, the tech will probably be needed, but it has to remain a tool, not like the whole process of game making. You know what I mean? So it's a little worrying for developers, but I think it could be positive if we all work together to like, okay, how much of an extent are we going to use AI, and is it like, are we using our own assets with AI, or are we using other people's assets, and we should not be doing that.
Yeah, and that seems to be like Steam Valve's point right now is like, hey, if you're using like a third-party AI tool to generate art, it's just stealing other people's art. If you built the AI from the ground up using your own artist's like work, then there's like a justification for why you would want to include AI art. But we're still so early into it that most of these companies, it's just easier for them to just third-party AI their way through this, and that involves a bunch of stolen stuff. This, I think, was important to bring up because there was a lot of people being like, oh, Valve's is on the side of the artists, but Valve was mostly just protecting its company asset, which is Steam, from legal matters. So it's a good move for artists. The reasoning behind it is a little bit more... not nefarious, but it's not quite good guy Valve as people were originally stating. But yeah, the AI stuff is getting pretty scary right now.
I'm really scared as a writer. I've been doing this for like 10 years now, on like 2 years full time, or 3 years maybe at this point. But it's very scary because like I feel like my job can be replaced by AI if it grows more intelligent, and like. Apparently, some people at Gizmodo and Kotaku are really furious about the owner because they announced the move to AI content. It's a bit scary. It really is. But hopefully, there's going to be some laws in place that like protect our jobs.
Yeah, laws are just. It's going to come down to like the unionization of a lot of things, and just like contracts with these publishers being like, hey. If you want actual writing from actual writers, we need to block AI in many different ways. Like it started with a lot of these companies where they're like quietly just being like, oh, we're only using it for editing, which is just like, oh, okay, well, technically Grammarly is an AI, sort of, in a broad sense. But then but it's being pushed more and more of just like, it's been for a while. Like a lot of financial companies use it in terms of like, not financial companies, but financial news websites use a lot of it because they just, use the AI to point to the numbers, and the sentences just come out very basic of like, hey, this stock is up, this stock is down. And it's just been getting more and more of a thing. I think, was it Ubisoft not too long ago that kind of like talked about potentially using AI for writing? Not that they would replace writers.
Assets,
Yeah. Because they were just like, it could do the busy work.
The next one,
which is kind of understandable. You're still going to need a human touch to undo that. Like I've messed with some AI stuff in my work just to kind of see what it can do, and most of the time it's like, oh, it kind of gets you where you need to go, but it also needs a ton of adjusting still. But it is moving at a rapid pace that like protections need to start happening to kind of get that going. And protect people just from being able to like make a living wage, standpoint, and just also like an ethics standpoint of if you want quality content, you can't just rely on AI to spit out stuff.
Yeah,
I've seen enough nightmare commercials that AI is producing. Anytime those go on.
It looks terrible.
Yeah, it's horrifying. It's really close to what you would expect a commercial to be, but it's not quite there yet.
Yeah.
So we'll God. We'll probably see like some AI commercials during like the next couple Super Bowls as people try and like use that as a marketplace to try and save money and get a bunch of views. But let's move on from the scary world of AI to kind of a sad story. Daedalic Games, I think that's how you pronounce it. Could be wrong.
I don't know.
The developers of Lord of the Rings Gollum have announced that they are ending all internal development after the poor reception of Lord of the Rings Gollum. Instead, the company will focus on publishing titles instead. And with this news, they're laying off over 25 employees and canceled a Lord of the Rings game they were currently working on. Chris, you've been covering games for a while. This feels like the fastest of game release to, oh no, we're not doing this again.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah, that like they probably poured in a lot of money for this game and were hoping to have it sell better, I guess. But I don't know, man. Like, game development is just so hard to get into nowadays. Like, especially if you want to make a game of that quality, you have to put in millions upon millions of dollars, and we'll be talking about that later, actually. Mm-hmm. But like, you have to put in so much money for AAA and quadruple A kind of development that like some of these smaller publishers are fading away, you know. And it's unfortunate that Daedalic isn't developing their own games anymore, but that money might go into like helping indies create smaller games and stuff. And I have to be honest, like, I'm less inclined to play big games like Horizon Forbidden West anymore. Like, I'm more into like playing smaller kind of indie titles that have short stories to tell that are like 8 to 10 hours long, you know. I just hope like AAA developers go back to that phase. But anyway, that was a tangent. My apologies. This is sad news, of course, for Daedalic, and I know, like, I think part of why they're not making games is because like they used to make like point and click kind of adventures and stuff that probably didn't make enough money for them, and it's kind of a niche, so they're just not making games anymore because they tried to go for the AAA route and they failed.
Yeah, it definitely seems like a mismanagement sort of situation in terms of what they promised to what they released. I mean, Lord of the Rings Gollum was being just roasted on the internet for how bad it is, because it felt like a early PS3 era game. I'm messed up in the head, so when I saw the bad reviews for this, it's currently like a 38 on Metacritic, and I saw the janky gameplay, I was like, I kind of want to pick this game up. But that
I have a copy, by the way. I was sent a copy. I haven't played it yet.
Yeah, it's on my list of games to play one day when it goes like super on sale, if they don't just take it out right, because we've seen games in the past where they review so poorly, they're so buggy that they just take the games off the market. And this could be nominated for that sort of thing, especially you have Embracer Group trying to exploit the Lord of the Rings franchise, as they put a couple weeks ago. So they might not want this on the market too long if they plan to pump out.
They don't want to pay those licensing fees.
Yeah, pay those licensing fees, and then also the idea that they don't want like bad Lord of the Rings games out there if they don't have to have them out there. So this could be one that disappears soon, and that's just me being a video game collector being like, do I need to pick up a physical copy of this game?
I believe the Embracer Group owns the game rights right now, so I bet they hate Daedalic for what they put out.
No, that's what I mean. Like the Embracer came out a couple weeks ago being like, we need to exploit the Lord of the Rings franchise, and he used the word exploit, which is just like, I know business-wise that's what you're supposed to do, but don't say that part out loud. Use a different word.
No, it's just a weird vibe coming out of there. I don't know.
Yeah.
Embracer Group, it's just weird.
Man, Embracer Group is a wild, wild company, and then when you find out that like they were going to acquire another studio that was going to make them okay, and then they didn't get it, so then they have to fire a bunch of people, but won't tell you how many people they're firing. So...
But I'm glad they exist because they're the ones that are actually developing those like AA kind of games that like you miss playing. Like, I love a third-person action adventure like Last of Us, but for God's sake, I'm getting kind of tired of the open world kind of genre. Like the third-person action genre and all that, like just seem to like mesh together. Like Final Fantasy 16 kind of feels like that kind of game too. Now I'm like, I just want an epic RPG. With lots of mechanics, not just like a streamlined system. Anyway, another tangent.
I can tell you're in the same like burnout factor I am with some of those games. So you're just like, I just want my small game. I want my AA game that we used to get in the PS3 era, the PS2 era, And right now we're either getting like super small indie or gigantic open world.
Nothing in the middle.
Yeah, there's not, and Gollum was supposed to be one of those ones, but they just weren't able to. I don't know if it wasn't like when they first announced the Gollum thing, I was just like, does anyone really want to play a game as Gollum?
No.
And
But there are some intriguing ideas there, like, for example, like you're switching between Gollum and his like evil self. Right? I can't remember his name now.
Smeagol. Yeah.
So they could have done something interesting there, and I saw a bit of gameplay from Easy Allies, and yeah, there's a little bit of that in there, but I guess it just isn't well done. I guess
it's a bad platformer. It's just if you told me they're making a Gollum game, I would be like, oh, cool, like a point and click adventure or a small indie Gollum game. And now they're like, no,
cool.
They're like, no, we're gonna try doing a AAA Gollum with like a AA budget, and it just didn't work out. No. And then of all the characters in the Lord of the Rings universe, I feel like if you're going to do like an action adventure third person game, there's better characters to do that with if you want to be successful. But it also could have come down to like what their budget would have been able to do. And they were just like, I guess our budget works with a Gollum game. But guess we will not get a Gollum 2. We'll have to wait till see what Embracer Group does with the Lord of the Rings franchise. Could you imagine
if they licensed out Lord of the Rings like Warhammer does, and like Warhammer's been kicking ass recently with like a lot of their releases. So if they repeated that with Lord of the Rings, I think it could do pretty well actually for them.
It sounds like that's what Embracer is going to try and do, because they're not really that good at producing games, but they definitely have a valuable IP that they could send out to other people. It's just a matter of like how much people really want to dig into like the Lord of the Rings universe, which I know there's a ton of people, but I feel like with the Lord of the Rings stuff, like when you see like some of the Amazon stuff, people just kind of care about the people from the original books, the original movies, to where there's only so many times you're going to like license that out. It's a reason why you don't see like multiple Spider-Man games from like different studios or anything like that. You just want one studio working on Spider-Man. And Lord of the Rings.
I'll take a Telltale Lord of the Rings game.
Yeah, if this was 10 years ago, Chris, and Telltale was the studio.
This Resurgence game was pretty good. I know it's from former Telltale devs, but I think it could work.
it could work. I just don't know what Telltale is anymore. There's so many studios like that now where I'm just like, I don't know if that's a studio I love anymore. But we'll move on from Lord of the Rings Gollum. Expect me before the end of the year to play this game, and
you should do a live stream of it.
I should.
Like a drunk live stream.
But the problem is I'm going to unironically like it, and people are going to think I'm crazy, and it's going to invalidate my Game of the Year list, and people are going to be like, how is this your number 9 on your top 10? And it's just going to lead to a huge mess. But I usually have one questionable game on my top 10 list every year. Just like, I liked it because I liked it, not because it was like good. We'll move on though. Chris, have you been following the FTC drama? I know it's almost impossible not to follow some of it.
This is a mess too.
We talked a lot about this last week, but some things happened last week when we recorded, like the day after. And that's basically Sony, they suck at redacting. So when you give files to the court, you're allowed to redact certain information. But those files will be scanned and posted online. Sony apparently just used a Sharpie on these documents instead of using like the redacted tape that some people use, or there's like a heavier marker you can use. So when these files got uploaded, you could still totally see what was.
I bet Jim Ryan did this himself because he seems
like God, yeah, he seems like he's the Michael Scott of video game. CEOs. I imagine the PlayStation offices are just like a weird version of the Office, but like the UK Office, not the original Office.
Right.
Because Michael Scott's likable, but I forget what Ricky Gervais's character was called. But yeah, so all these documents that Sony were hoping to keep information hidden, that information was easily visible by just looking at the scanned documents and turning the contrast up You can clearly see what was written, and some of the stuff that was popped up was like financial figures. Three of the most interesting ones were The Last of Us development cost over $220 million over 5 years. Horizon Forbidden West cost $212 million over the course of 5 years. And then Call of Duty made PlayStation $800 million in 2021. And globally, it made $1.5 billion.
For PlayStation? That's
yes.
crazy.
So let's just break these numbers down one by one. The Last of Us Part 2 costing $220 million over 5 years. That sounds about right, I would imagine. Like what I expected. I'm actually surprised it's not more, based on what that game kind of went through to get out the door.
Yeah.
And then Horizon Forbidden West getting like really close to it with 5 years, but Horizon Forbidden West like also launched on multiple platforms, so it kind of makes sense why that's like really close to it as well. Chris, based on those two numbers, are they kind of where you expected? And of course, this doesn't include marketing, so this number is actually technically higher.
I would say that's what I would expect, to be honest. Just based on the studio and how many people they hire, right? A lot of those people at Naughty Dog are probably veterans as well, so they probably have even more. I don't know. they earn even more of a wage, so it makes sense with a studio like that. But at the same time, like PlayStation earns those royalties from every disc that is made, so they can kind of afford to make these kind of games, right?
Yeah. Do you, for these type of games, do you think the budget is why they're looking at like live service games in terms of just like
maybe,
hey, this cost $220 million over 5 years. We made our money once, like we made our money back, but it's not consistently earning us money for a long period of time. I wonder if they're looking at this stuff as kind of like bloated and something that's kind of scary. Like stuff that takes 5 to 7 years to develop is probably scary to them if they're not consistently making money each and every year of development.
At the same time, I feel like there's so much competition for live service games that like PlayStation's gonna enter, like they're just late to the party, I would say. There could be a second wave where they're like, we're tired of Fortnite, we're tired of Call of Duty, we want to play something else. So maybe they'll win that way. But like the odds are so stacked against them that I don't know if it's worth it, and it's not a part of their brand, like PlayStation is known for its single player experiences, right? So I'm, like, why don't they make like smaller games that take 2 years? Like a smaller Uncharted.
Yeah, or just you look at like what the Astrobot was able to do, and just like, oh, give us more of those experiences. I would even consider like Ratchet and Clank a smaller title, like compared to like The Last of Us and Horizon.
I'd be interested to see how much that would actually how much that cost. Rift Apart, like is it just as much as like The Last of Us and Horizon? And because like the shorter development cycles, is like Spider-Man cheaper to make, and like can other studios learn from Insomniac on how to make games quicker and cheaper?
I wonder when it comes to Spider-Man, because those rights are so weird, if it's cheaper to develop but the licensing costs are like kind of balance that out in a way. But I would imagine Ratchet and Clank would have cost less, but there might have been some R&D going into that cost.
About 100 million,
yeah, and it probably made that money back, as long as you don't count like marketing against it. Probably was able to clear that relatively easy. But these games definitely do take a long time when we're talking about like The Last of Us Part 2, which is what we were actually talking about, not The Last of Us 1. Let me put that in the notes. And Horizon Forbidden West. Like those are gigantic games that they're trying a bunch of different things and have a super long development cycle because of what they're trying to do. And you see what Insomniac does, which, like, Chris, I think we talked about this before between me and you, and then I've talked about this on a podcast. I think Insomniac has turned into like the best PlayStation studio from like the output level and the quality, and I'm sure financially they work out pretty well for when you take all those into account. But when you look at The Last of Us Part 2, development, taking as long as it did and costing as much, costing how much it cost, is probably why they're like, hey, can you guys make a live service game?
Like live service games might be cheap as well, like to start development, and then you just keep supporting it, right? If it does well, maybe that's how they're thinking about it. Like, hey, if one takes off, they that makes up like the cost of like the 9 other titles. I don't know.
Yeah, you would.
I don't even know like one would even be successful, because especially like because the marketing reached so far. You know, like we don't know, we haven't seen any gameplay of these kind of upcoming multiplayer games, and like what's unique about these games. We don't know anything about it. So like if they keep this kind of marketing going, I don't know if they'll do well with this concept. But at the same time, I feel like single player games have been supported more now than ever. Like look at Hogwarts Legacy. Look at like the recent like single player titles. They've actually been doing really well, like selling 15 million copies around that. You know, so you can make money from doing single player games. So I don't see why you're doubling down on like live service games when they're not doing as well. You see a lot of these games like falling down, like Knockout City, for example, would be one, or
Rumbleverse and
Rumbleverse. That's it.
Yeah. I think it comes
multiverse to an extent.
Yeah. I think it comes down to like we've hit the point where these executives are looking at a game of like, oh, we only made our money once. We need to make our money consistently from customers. And the thing I worry about with PlayStation, which I'm sure listeners are kind of tired of me talking about, but I'm just like, the amount of games that they plan to release, it's like 10 games before 2026. A lot of those games could be in the similar space, which means they're going to eat each other and their markets. And that's going to be problematic for PlayStation. And then also, I'm worried what PlayStation will consider a success. Like, are they okay with Factions 2 or whatever it's going to be called when it eventually comes out, if it ever comes out? Are they going to be okay with it being like in a top 10 list of like live service games money generated? Are they going to be okay with it being like a number 9, a number 10? Or are they just going to be like, wait, we didn't beat Fortnite, we didn't beat Call of Duty, we didn't beat Rocket League? You know, like, are they going to go and think like they're going to fit in that space and carve out a top spot?
Another issue is like most live service games are on every platform. Like PlayStation wants to keep their games exclusive, right? So it'll probably be on PS5 and PC. Would that be a successful kind of like system? You know, like would they have to put their games on Xbox and Switch for them to sell? You know,
the Switch would be something they would maybe want to consider, or the Switch successor. Xbox still doesn't have enough people with those consoles to make a difference, but like the Switch would be one that, like, they would be silly not to at least look at the Switch in terms of.
I don't know about that, mate. Like there's 40 million Xbox Series X's out there or something like that.
Is it that high? But it's still
no, probably not that high. Like Xbox Ones or X. Let me see. Let me check this.
Because they got quiet with their numbers. I think they're still selling 1/3 of what the PS5 is.
18.5 million. Apparently.
Okay, so yeah, like 1/3.
There's still quite a lot of people though.
Yeah, and you would hope that number grows if you're Xbox, and it will naturally.
I think because of Fable and the Starfield, you know, there's some big games coming finally for them, so I think it'll pick up. But yeah, that's something that PlayStation will have to consider, like if they want to be successful live service wise.
Yeah, and I also don't know if PlayStation's ready for like the challenge of releasing a multiplayer game on PC, in terms of fighting cheat engines and all sorts of different things that you have to deal with on PC. Like, you can cheat on console. There's many ways around it to do it, but it's a lot more difficult, and most people don't want to do it. But when you come to PC, you're gonna have to deal with all sorts of chaos. And I wonder if PlayStation's ready for that aspect of like, oh, we released a damn near perfect live service game. Oh shit, it's popular enough that people are cheating left and right, and now we can't keep up. That's going to be super important for them if they do multi-platform.
Then their internal studios don't know how to make PC ports. Like, look at Last of Us Part 1, you know?
Yeah, and that's a crazy thing, is because like they added those studios that specialize in PC, but they still had to outsource to other companies. And it just didn't work out. Live service stuff. This just shows you that Sony is probably looking at these budgets for their single player games, and they're pivoting to live service games just because, not that it's not sustainable, but they want more money consistently, as opposed to having to have a studio go dark for 5 years. Because right now we're in a point with PlayStation where a lot of these studios are in the dark because they're heads down working on their next game. Like, we won't see Sucker Punch's next thing for like probably 3 years or 4 years.
I don't know. I think we'll see it next year.
We might see it next year. I just don't know.
I think we can see Ghost of Tsushima 2 next year.
We'll see it. I don't think it comes out next year.
Probably not.
So I think that's why they're looking at like live service games of like, oh, we're gonna really have Guerrilla go dark for 5 years, you know, and they don't want that to be a thing for most of their studios.
Just make a new Killzone.
Just make a new Killzone. Just remake Killzone 2.
Back your older stuff, like Resistance would look cool, next gen Killzone would look cool, you know.
It would look cool, but I just don't know if they're like, would Resistance be a thing multiplayer wise in 2023? They would need a really good angle
they would,
for gameplay. Just like why they won't release SOCOM. It's just like, I just don't think there's a good SOCOM angle right now.
I actually find that very weird, like SOCOM, because like you could probably make like a really good military simulation kind of shooter online, and I think there'd be like a good community around that. Like, look at like Counter-Strike and look at all sorts of like military shooters on PC that are like Escape from Tarkov, that kind of stuff. I think people would actually get into SOCOM nowadays.
Potentially, but I would also say, like, if you're going to put it on PC, good luck getting the Counter-Strike people off Counter-Strike. Good luck getting the Valorant people off Valorant. It might do well for PlayStation, but if they're trying to do global domination, that's when you're going to look at those franchises and you're like, is it enough to peel it away? Which is the thing I said earlier of, I hope PlayStation, when they make these live service games, they're not hoping to overtake Fortnite. They're not hoping to overtake Valorant.
Probably,
I'm hoping they go in modest with their expectations. And I just don't know if Jim Ryan is capable of that. The last number, which I think I mentioned like 20 minutes ago now, Call of Duty made $800 million and globally $1.5 billion for PlayStation, which is why PlayStation's making a big stink about this whole acquisition in public.
And yeah, Jim Ryan doesn't care. He says, we'll be fine.
Yeah. And I talked about this with Dave last week. I'm like, does he mean that? Or is that just something you just tell your employees because you don't want your employees to see you sweat?
Right.
Because he can't put an email out being like, we're fucked. Like, he needs to put an email like, we'll be good. We're fine. We're number one. So
if I was him, I'd take that 10-year deal and then work on something to compete against Call of Duty. But, you know.
Yeah,
time.
I think no matter what happens with Call of Duty, like, the deal goes through, Jim Ryan signs a 10-year deal, puts out a press release being like, I signed this 10-year deal for you fans. He rejects the 10-year deal. He's like, I rejected the deal for you fans. Either way, it's going to be for the gamers. And it's just going to be up to interpretation what that means. But you're definitely going to get a press release being like, we did it for you. And who knows what that will mean in the end. But
do you think, okay, out of context question here, right?
Okay.
Do you think that there's as much of a console war debate as there was during the PS3, 360 era, or PS2, Xbox, GameCube era? It's like, do you think that's still there?
Man, I think it's probably worse. Just because
really?
I think more people have a voice that probably shouldn't have a voice.
You're right.
Chris,
you're right.
Have you ever gone to the For You section on Twitter and then gone to the video games topic?
Yeah, you might be right.
Yeah. It was bad during the PS3 and 360 era, but we had flip phones. So it was a little harder to get your opinions out there.
Right, true.
And like now, anytime I go to like the For You section of like Twitter, it's just a bunch of fanboy trolly accounts that Twitter's like, this is a good representation of the video game voice. And it's just people in the comments just vomit like thoughts, like this diarrhea of the brain just hitting on Twitter. And TikTok's not much better. when you go on like TikTok and
are there people defending Redfall in that in Twitter?
Yes.
No,
there were
no
people
way.
that were saying before the game came out they were already making that game their personality. Like,
oh boy.
So like again, Chris, there are Nickelback fans. There's probably someone right now that has a Lord of the Rings Gollum t-shirt on right now who's playing it for the 100th time, unironically. Like there are gonna be just people out there just cheerleading this shit. It's just bad. I think it's worse than what it was. At least back then we had fun and like we're like PS3fanboy.com and like that was a legitimate site that was good.
Right.
Now you just have people just fucking, oh my god. I love Twitter, or I used to love Twitter. I kind of don't like what Twitter is now.
But... I don't look at the bad areas, I guess. I just have my circles on my Twitter, and there's not a lot of discontent. So...
See, eventually I get bored and I swipe right, or I think right. Yeah, right. Brings you to the for you section, and that's just a hellscape. It's the only thing worse than video game fanboys is wrestling fanboys.
Oh boy. Yeah, you're right.
That is a dark section of Twitter. Wrestling fanboys. It's super weird. You have people, man. If you followed wrestling fanboys, there are fanboys to specific journalists in that report on wrestling, and it's just batshit crazy.
What?
Yes.
Oh yeah, like Cultaholic and yeah, that kind of stuff.
Like the Fightful people, who I love their work at Fightful, but you have people that like they dedicate their personality to rooting for them or hating them, and it's super weird.
That is very odd.
You have people that like make parody accounts of journalists.
What?
That write about wrestling. It's chaos. Don't write for wrestling, Chris.
Okay.
Don't do
I was considering it, but now I'm not.
Super easy work. You just have to have like 3 opinions, but like people will hate you for the 3 opinions. Mm-hmm. But that's all I got for news, Chris. Speaking of wrestling, we'll just jump into playing and watching.
Sure.
And let's talk about AEW Fight Forever, which we both are reviewing.
Yeah, I received a copy of it.
Yep, I also received a copy from the publisher, and I've put quite a bit of time into this game.
Yeah. What do you think? What's the verdict?
Of the game, or verdict on how many hours I played?
Of the game.
Long story short, I think this game is something that at times doesn't feel like it should be full priced, but it's still worthwhile experience, especially if you are looking for something different in the wrestling space, and are kind of tired.
It's very different.
Yeah, it's very different. It's very different in a way that's also it's still a throwback to a certain era. But if you're looking for something that is not a 2K game, this is definitely a great alternative to that, and I think it's a great first step for AEW, but there are some times where it just feels like it just comes up a little short. I don't know how you came away from that with that opinion.
I like how basic it is in terms of the controls. Like, I find it that kind of refreshing in a way. But at the same time, the gameplay feels a bit lacking at points. Like, for example, like when I'm like sprinting in the game is just so awkwardly done, and like trying to nail a move while sprinting is kind of like awkward to pull off. I don't know. Like some of the one thing that annoys me about the game, and I like to do this during the WWE 2K games, just like watching the entrances. Mm-hmm. But like they shorten it so much in AEW. Like I wish like we actually saw like the full kind of like motion of it. But as you said earlier this week to me, I think like the animations aren't good enough to carry like a full entrance.
Yeah, I think they were smart in cutting the corners where they cut them, but cutting those corners makes it feel like a budget game, and I think that is
shouldn't be $60.
yeah, it definitely has those vibes to where like if this was just $40, I think it'd be an easier pill to swallow. But let's go talk about the gameplay a little bit. Sure,
sorry.
the gameplay for this one and for this game, they're going for the more simplistic style that you mentioned earlier. They're going for that N64 Aki style, which that was a studio that made the No Mercy games. I think they made the WrestleMania games and also made the WCW games. There's a little confusion. Some people thought Yuke's made those games, but Yuke's did not make those games. But I've seen a lot of those opinions online. But it was definitely a different studio. Yuke's just worked on WWE over the last 20 years, and I think people just kind of confuse that timeline just a little bit. The gameplay is very simple. It's like you have a punch button, you have a kick button, and then you have grapple, and you can do different combinations of square, triangle with the analog sticks to get the different moves out. And you do get a move list if you hit pause, and the move set I think are pretty good at capturing the move set you would want for that particular character.
Yes. And everyone feels unique.
Yes.
That's what I like. In WWE, you feel like, they're copying the same style as the other wrestler I just played as, So It's nice that AEW just feels unique in that kind of way. Like, everyone has their own taunts and attacks, and it's kind of refreshing, actually.
Yeah, I think with some of the 2K games, they definitely get the signature moves, the finisher moves right for each character, obviously. Yeah. But there's often here's lucha style, here's big guy style, here's
small guy, yeah.
Yeah, there's different aspects like that the 2K games do where it can kind of make people feel samey because everyone can kind of just do each other's moves. Yeah. AEW does a really good job of just hey, these are the moves that the wrestler would actually use in this particular match, or this is their style. So I think the game does a really good job gameplay wise of capturing that while also having very simplistic controls.
And one thing I really like about this game, there's no player scores. Everyone's on the same kind of level, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. That definitely does help, because I hate the rating system in the 2K games, because some of my favorite wrestlers end up getting 70 scores, and it's just it's going to be way harder to beat Roman Reigns now. This one, everyone's on an even playing field, which... you're right. I think that's a nice aspect to it, especially if you want to give it an arcadey vibe, which is that this is definitely kind of going for. My only complaint for the most part from a gameplay perspective is I feel like the arbitrary grade they give you at the end doesn't really have a good meaning, or I don't really know sometimes what I'm supposed to be aiming for to get a better rating. Especially,
I agree with that. Yeah.
Especially at the end where I'm just you'll get 3 A's, but you'll still get a final grade of a B-, and you'll get a 3-star rating out of 5. And you're just what the fuck did you want me to do? What were you looking for? And they don't really explain that too well. It does suffer from all the issues we have with other games where multi-person matches are just kind of a chaotic mess to try and win.
Oh God.
Tag matches are always a headache.
I couldn't do those tag matches. I couldn't finish the tag match in this game. I couldn't.
I got the hang of it, but it was basically okay, knock the guy off the ropes and then immediately do your finisher, get the pin, and then just hope you positioned yourself enough where your tag team partner can interfere. It's a pain. Same thing with ladder matches, but this is a problem every wrestling game has, where it's just in real wrestling, the wrestler who's not supposed to be in a match, they just go take a nap outside, and this does not happen in video games. Did you have problems kicking out of pins? Because I mashed the hell out of my buttons, and sometimes it felt I
haven't had issues yet.
Okay, because there has been a couple times where I'm mashing the hell out of my controller, and I just don't know if I'm just not meant to kick out, because I don't know what they want from me. We'll go a little deeper into this, just because this is it's wrestling. I'm gonna go deep into this. What did you think of the What
do you think about the grappling system?
I like it because it's just very simplistic. I did pull up the move list just to get an idea, because I early on felt like I just had a very basic moveset for some of the wrestlers until I dug into the move list. So it does seem like it requires you to go into the move list to kind of get a better feel for everything.
That's good, because that's what you want from the fighting game, right? You want a bit of everyone should feel different, and you should learn each character. It's cool.
There's definitely a nuance there that you have to dig in to get. But it's not necessarily something that you need to seek out if you just want to just have quick matches, because you could just easily spam punch kick until the person just collapses. But if you want to have a little bit more fun with the game, you definitely want to get into the move list. The mode variety for the exhibition stuff, the non-story mode, I think it had a good amount of stuff. You have your 1v1 tag trios, or triple threat 4-person Casino Battle Royale is chaotic mess. And then
the
you have
best way.
Yeah, and then you have the barbed wire death match, which
so cool. I love it.
I know it's chaos. It's just the ring becomes just like a bloody mess with explosions everywhere. I love it. There's a sense of urgency because you're fighting against a countdown. Like I really enjoyed that match. I thought it was really stupid in the best possible way.
Yeah. You just want to have fun with these games, like 2K takes itself too seriously sometimes, so it's nice to have that, like, you can ride a skateboard or in matches. You
can just watch the entire ring just explode, and then your characters just are covered in blood. And it's the best kind of stupid and wacky that you would want for something that's trying to be like lighthearted and arcadey.
And also, if you have kids, you can turn off the blood. Just putting it out there.
Yeah, you definitely. If you have kids and you don't want to see like a bunch of fake blood, man, you got to turn it off because once these wrestlers start bleeding, they leak.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, it's kind of chaotic. There is a story mode, Road to the Elite. I'm curious to see what you thought of this. Okay, yeah, you just hit it right on it. Like,
it's just so repetitive. Like for example, it's the same kind of scene setup. Or visiting every kind of location around the US, and you get the same kind of food, and like it's the same. Kind of
the food's different in every city. It's the same restaurant.
The food is different. Yeah, it's the same kind of restaurant look, but you can tell it's definitely made on the cheap.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of ideas in here that I like that I thought were. This is gonna sound like I'm being a little mean, but there's a lot of ideas that are cute.
Yeah.
Like, I like the idea of having the wrestler, when they visit the city, have the option to, like, do a meet and greet, go to a restaurant, see the sights. And you get, like, a little bit of a cutscene sometimes with, like, wrestlers that might drop by during the cutscene. And it very much reminds me of, like, the Yakuza side quests, but, like, a very low-key version of that. Like, inspired by, but they did not have the budget to do.
What I would have done, like, if you're roaming the streets and stuff, maybe have like a beat 'em up mode or something like that.
That would be great. If they can expand us to have like backstage brawls like we used to get in like the old WWE games, that would be great. And have stuff have some meaning, because like they try and set up some story through these cutscenes, and a lot of them sometimes come across as nonsensical in terms of like, I won the tag team titles with Paige, and then I betrayed Paige immediately after winning with him. And then I wasn't the tag team champ again. And I was just like, what the fuck just happened? And then that storyline dropped and Paige was still interacting with me like we're friends. And
what?
And it just didn't make sense to me. And I felt like, did I miss a cutscene? Did something happen that it just didn't make sense? But I do think the mode is worth playing through like once, maybe twice, because the women do have a slightly different start to theirs, but the division's so much smaller that it gets a little bit more repetitive, because I believe there's only about 8 women on this roster right now.
Oh damn!
Maybe 10 of like the roster. So like the men's story starts off with like the Casino Battle Royale, which I think might be too chaotic to start because that match drags if you don't like do all the work. And then the women's story started for me with just like a one-on-one match, and then easily led to like a title opportunity when there's only like 2 women's titles to compete for. So
sure.
But it still goes through, still goes through the timeline. You do get like some cool little like documentary style cutscenes when you hit like pay-per-views and milestones. Those are well done if you want to revisit the past, or if you're new to AEW and you want a little bit of like context. But this mode definitely doesn't feel like fully baked.
I think they could add more stuff to it as like they continue to work on it, because we've heard that it's not going to be like WWE where it's going to be yearly. They're going to continually update this game, and hopefully by the time, like in 2 years' time, we'll see like 25, 30 women wrestlers in there. Especially now that AEW is like getting stronger in that department. It'd be cool if we see more stuff like that, and I just like I think they have a good product on their hands. They just need to work on it much more and give it more polish. Maybe improve the graphics a little bit. I don't know. I'm liking AEW Fight Forever. I haven't gone back to it for a while. But I don't know. There's some things that bother me, like the counter system. It feels like random, like when I'm trying to counter something, and I'm like, did it input correctly?
Yeah, it sometimes feels like it needs a better indicator on when like a counter was successful or when something's coming. But I know they didn't want to like clutter like UI, so it's like okay. But definitely does feel like a luck system sometimes with like countering moves. The chain wrestling stuff didn't pop up for me as often as I would have wanted because there was like a chain wrestling system.
Come up for me 2 times,
Yeah, so I don't know if it's something on my end that I'm just like not initiating it enough, but I've definitely tried. I think maybe half a dozen times I got some chain wrestling to pop up for me. But I also just try and get through matches as fast as possible because I think you need to do like 100 exhibition matches to get Owen Hart. So
really,
I think that's how that works.
It's kind of weird because there's some characters that you have to unlock through the shop, like Aubrey Edwards and Cody Rhodes,
which that feels like a throwback to like hidden characters. Usually you'd have to like purchase, but the Cody Rhodes one is just kind of funny because it's like they should have just had him because he was like really cheap to get too.
Yeah.
You didn't have to work for him like at all. Like once you did like a couple matches, it's like you can buy Cody now.
I feel like that might be like a contractual thing where like you can't put him on the main roster, but you can have him unlock. I don't know.
yeah. Let's talk about the roster because you just started to really watch wrestling over the last like couple years, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. The roster. How does the roster feel for you? Does it feel pretty indicative of like the AEW product, or are you a little?
It's got the main stars in there for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, like CM Punk and oh gosh, my brain's like
MJF, the Elite.
MJF, the Elite, Kenny Omega. You know, it's who you'd expect. Like Nyla Rose, I think, is in the game. I believe.
Yeah. Nyla Rose is in the game,
and Statlander's in the game too.
Yeah, Jade Cargill's in the game. So they got like the major stars for like the women's division, men's division. I think the tag division is the only division that got like screwed.
He kind of did.
FTR
they're getting
is
added
DLC.
by DLC. Yeah.
But like missing stuff like the
Cows as well.
Missing the Acclaimed, Private Party, the Guns.
Yeah.
Missing 2 members of House of Black, Santana Ortiz 2.0. There's like a bunch of characters that or tag teams that they're missing that would have really padded out the roster. I feel like the women's division, like even though they don't have a lot in this game, it's the closest to like almost there. Like they're only missing like in my mind like Jamie Hayter, Tony Storm, and like a handful of other people. Like maybe they're 4 characters away from me looking at like their women's division in the game and being like perfect. But the men's division definitely feels like it's missing. You know, like we don't have Swerve, no Claudio, no Takeshita, Samoa Joe. Like they're missing a bunch of people.
This is still new, like it's still like this game was supposed to release like 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So it's based off like the old roster in some ways.
Yeah, but they did squeeze in some people, you know, like some newer people, which makes it more questionable. Like apparently FTR was supposed to be in the game, but they kind of like dropped them, and I think that was because there was like contract negotiations happening with them because they didn't re-sign until last year. So there's a lot of like behind the scenes business that we shouldn't be thinking about, but when you look at the roster and they're missing certain people, you're like, I need to dig in to know why. But they do plan, like they already have season 1 characters announced. It's like FTR, Hookhausen, Keith Lee, the Bunny for some reason is like DLC character. Like I love the Bunny and Penelope Ford, great, you know, women to have on the roster, but it's definitely one of those ones where it's like this, is there a demand for the Bunny? Is my question.
Probably not.
Yeah. Other shortcomings, I would say the mini games.
Yeah, not good.
They're not good. They feel sluggish. There's a lot of them. I'll give them credit. There's like good variety. They're just not fun.
Yeah.
Like at all. Like I was annoyed like playing some of them. Chris, would you think it would be too rough for me to say that maybe they shouldn't have been in the game?
I agree.
Okay, cool. I felt
one or 2 more wrestlers. Yeah,
like of the things, like if they would have put the effort they put in mini games just into like some of the cutscene story stuff in the story mode, I would have been really excited.
I think they did that just to make it like make it more like $60 to people.
Yeah, like hey, there's mini games in here, like
yeah.
But I feel like of all the great like party games that I have access to, I would have a lot of people looking at me sideways if I invited them over to play the Fight Forever mini games.
I would WWE likes to expand like their horizons. I would like to play a WWE Mario Party game. I think it'd be funny.
Have you ever played WWE Crush Hour?
I haven't.
It's a Twisted Metal game set in a WWE universe.
That's great.
Okay.
That's great.
Look into that. Like, you'll see that and be like, man, WWE should have done this more. It's a PS2 game. It's wonderful in the worst and best ways.
I fucking love my GM mode, by the way. Like,
yeah.
It'd be great if AEW adds that at some point, something like that.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason they don't is my last shortcoming of this game is the customization is weak. The create a wrestler is very bare bones. It kind of
didn't touch that yet.
It teases you because like they do have a lot of audio samples that they had the announcer record, and the stuff that they recorded was clearly geared towards like a really good customization because like some of the last names they chose are like the indie names of some very prominent WWE people, to where it's just like, oh, they actually had, you know, Justin Roberts, the announcer, record El Generico, Kevin Steen, you know, like there's a lot of names in there that they recorded, but then it's damn near impossible to create them because the customization stuff is just too slim.
That's a shame.
And I know we just spent like the last 10 minutes being like, this game has a lot of faults, but I'd like to go back to the beginning of like, I think the gameplay is still really fun. And there's a lot of aspects of this game to like. It just feels like it's a good first effort, but it just falls just a little bit short.
It's a good 7.
Yeah. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think like
nothing wrong.
It's a good first effort. Like if you're hungry for another wrestling game, this is a great alternative. And
it's not going to convert people to AEW like the WWE games did back in the day on PS1.
No. Other than the fact that, like, maybe if you have someone who hasn't watched wrestling in a while and they load up this roster and they're just like, oh, CM Punk's back? Oh, wait, the Big Show is in AEW? I mean, they won't see him on TV, but they might look at AEW to be like, oh, let me watch to see these people I know that I thought stopped wrestling. So there's at least that aspect to it that could bring in casual people, but yeah.
One of my hopes is that they'll have some collaboration DLC, like we'll see Monet. What's her first name?
Oh, Mercedes Monet.
Mercedes Monet and Will Ospreay or something, like an NJPW pack or something. That'd be cool.
Like, it's crazy. They have Maki Ito. I don't know if you're familiar with her.
Yeah.
They have her theme music in the menu.
Oh, so there might be...
They have her entrance, like her animation, as an option for your creative character, to where it's just like, did a contract fall through? Is a deal coming? Like, with whoever she's currently signed with, which I couldn't tell you. She might just be straight up independent. But, like, that would be great if there was, like, an indie pack.
Right.
If you can't do a New Japan pack. Like, they need to do a Forbidden Door pack. To pull in some people. I think if any company could do it, it would be AEW.
Yeah.
But overall, good first effort from AEW.
Yeah, for sure.
But
it needs to increase the budget a bit, I think.
Just a little bit. Just cut those mini games. It's too late now since they're not releasing sequels. They're just going to add to this, but just don't put more in.
Yeah. They are though.
Yeah, they are. I think they talked about like a kind of battle royale mode coming, so we'll see.
Oh no! What?
Yeah, Stadium Stampede I think is going to be the mode. So
okay.
I hope it's not an actual battle royale mode and it's just like an actual like, hey, we're fighting in the stadium, but we'll see. Chris, we'll move on just a little bit before we talk about individual games we're playing. Do you want to talk a little bit about Crash Team Rumble?
For sure. Can we take a break though?
Yeah, we can take a break real quick. And we are back to talk about Crash Team Rumble. This is the 4v4 multiplayer game set in a Crash Bandicoot universe.
Mm-hmm. Silly concept, but somehow it works.
Surprisingly, it works. I mean, this is a interesting concept. I don't know how well it's going to work for them, but I actually am enjoying it. Which I remember I told you, like, you were surprised.
Yeah, I was. Because I kind of like the game as I'm playing it, but it's not that memorable to me that I'm like, okay, I want to get back to this, you know? So I'm glad you're enjoying it, Michael. But for me, I don't know, it's a bit too simple for me to really dig into it, like, for months on end, you know? Like, when you're making, like, a live service game like this, you want to make sure, like, there's a lot of things you could do in the game, lots of, like, things to unlock. And there are a lot of things to unlock in this game, but I don't feel like there's enough there to keep people going for a long time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think that's like the biggest flaw with this game is there's not much incentive to go back to it. The gameplay, I think, is fun. And I think this game desperately would have benefited from like a offline mode, like a single player couch co-op sort of thing, split screen, something. Because I do have fun with the mechanics. Like there's like 3 different classes to choose from with different characters attached to them and different abilities you can have.
And like AEW, like every character feels different.
Yes, every character feels different. Like you definitely, and when you pick your character, you kind of already know the role you're supposed to have, if that makes sense. Yeah. To where like it's a basic premise, very simple premise. You just have to collect as many of the Wumpa fruit as possible and score them. That's it. And first team to 1,000 wins. There's ability. There's ways to like boost your collecting ability and like your score. Matches happen relatively quick, and I think the only problem I had, which is something when we did like we did a couple hour session, is when the game's not going your way, it just seems like it's really hard to make a comeback.
Yeah, there should be like a comeback mechanic, and there is kind of like in the middle of the map. There's like this beast or monster that's available to you after you put in like 20 relics, so you can collect relics around the map, and like you can redeem them for like a bombardment of like objects like being sent to your enemies, or I know that it's a speed up ability or something like that, you know, that makes you invincible for a little while. There's all sorts of things like that, and I don't know, it does a good job of presenting all sorts of different mechanics to you. But yeah, like at the same time, it still feels like once you're in a team that has like 500 Wumpa fruit and the other one has like 1,600, there's no way to get back.
Yeah, there's no way to get back, and it just matches just kind of go quick. Like that's the only good thing is like when the match isn't going your way, it will end relatively quick. But that's when you run into the thing where you burn through the maps really fast, and then you start getting repeat maps, and it's there might not be enough maps at launch.
They're adding a new one soon. Yeah. So,
but it's also
new characters.
When talking about this game, like when you first brought this game to my attention, because I knew it was coming out, but in my mind, I always thought it was going to be free to play. But it's not.
Right.
So like I had different expectations then of just like, well, money's being put down for this game, so there's going to be a lot of maps, there's going to be a lot of content, and there really isn't. It's just the one game mode, really, a select amount of maps, to where it's just like, I don't know if this quite feels like it justifies a price, and that's where this game kind of falters. Like I've been enjoying it from the aspect of like this is going to sound like an insult, but if anyone that listens to the show knows, I when I say a game's kind of mindless, that doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad thing.
No, and it plays very well. Like I really enjoy when I'm playing it. Like everyone has their role. Crash Bandicoot's really fun to play as because you spin in place. You ground pound your enemies with his tummy. You know, like. That's what you expect from Crash, but like there's all sorts of different characters as well that play differently, and it all works together really well, in my opinion. Like, there's a but.
Yes,
it works if everyone knows their role. Like Dingo Dive, for example, like he should be at the opponent's base or your base, trying to block off enemies and defending or like attacking enemies, defending your allies or attacking enemies. And like they should be on spot, just like pushing people off the point. But it feels like to me that Crash Team Rumble doesn't do a good enough job of explaining everyone's role.
Yeah, it doesn't really, but you don't, like when I first played it with you, you're like, oh, did you do the tutorial? I'm like, nah, going in blind. And I figured it out within like a good like minute or two of what needs to happen.
Yeah.
So like it doesn't necessarily need to explain itself too much, but it definitely would be helpful. Maybe if you don't allow people to skip the tutorial, that would do wonders for this game.
Just like some UI just explaining, hey, this is what you're supposed to be doing.
Something like that. Or if the game notices that you haven't used your ultimate ability, like to remind you, like, you have this, click it.
Yep.
That would be helpful, because I've had matches where my teammates just, they don't know about the gemstone thing, where you can tap the certain gemstones and then you can boost your score, and you can keep that multiplier going for like 20, 40, or like it goes in increments of 20. So like then there's a trophy to get 100% boost, and it's just there's different things that the game doesn't really do a good job of explaining, or at least drawing your attention to it when you're playing. Like if your team falls behind, they should point you to like, hey, if you activate these gemstones, you can dig yourself out of this hole.
Right. But I have to redact a previous statement of mine. Like, I feel like that there is a lot to the gameplay. Like, you can use all sorts of like gadgets that you apply to your character. That can help you. I think that's what you mentioned, like the ultimate abilities and stuff. You can activate, and like they can really help your team out. I do like that. Customization is fine, like cowboy hats and all that kind of stuff.
The Pixel Crash is like great.
Pixel Crash, yeah. Yeah, but I think that comes with the edition we got, the deluxe edition.
Yeah. But there's also like the music that you can get that. For a while, I thought I was just unlocking menu music, and then I realized, like, oh no, that's the music you hear you'll hear when someone kills you, basically. Like,
or you're the MVP,
yeah, or when you're the MVP, to where it's just like, oh, that's like a nice touch. But it's definitely one of those things where it's just like, I don't know if in 2023 you can build a game like this around the Crash Bandicoot franchise. Like you can build a game around Crash. They proved it with Crash 4. But I don't know if you can build a live service game around Crash with a battle pass and his characters.
It's a bit weird, especially when it's like catered towards kids, It's a bit,
and it's not free to play.
It's a bit weird. Or families, and it's not free to play either. Yeah, that's true.
But there's a good game here. It's fun for the most part. I kind of just play it when I have like a podcast I want to listen to or something, and I'm just like, I just need to do something while I listen to this, and it's like a perfect game for that.
And it feels like good to score like 220 points or something at one moment, It feels so satisfying.
And then when you go through the board and you see you're the only person on your team that was trying to, I don't know, that's a nice feeling. That happened way too many times where it's just like, everyone's got zeros for some reason, but okay. Which probably means I am playing against children in this game. That did pick it up, because man, sometimes I'm just like, man, these people just aren't trying. But
do you think it's children or people who are nostalgic about Crash Bandicoot? Like,
I mean, it could be stoners that just can't do shit in the game, and I'm just playing against them or with them, and I'm just like,
right.
They're just high, remembering the good old days. Like, I don't know. Sometimes I'm just like, that's usually when I quit. Like when I have a couple teams that are just like, it's just no one's doing anything. I have been worried. I think you mentioned this to me at one point, where you're like, sometimes if you get into you get into like a session where you're playing for an hour, you kind of see the same people over and over again, and that's definitely something that worries me.
It hasn't got much of a life to it, I don't think, unless it goes free to play.
Yeah.
And then adds like Spyro, or like includes like guest characters like Mega Man or something crazy like that, or Banjo, or like, I think that'd be kind of cool if they did that.
Yeah, but, I want to see Spyro in this, but I also don't want him to hurt my boy. Like, I don't want him to be sullied.
We're not going to see the Skylanders one. We're not going to see the Skylanders Spyro. Come on.
Yeah, God, we probably would. All the alt costumes would be the Skylanders.
No.
We're gonna see the weird Elijah Wood Spyro that we never got.
I liked that one. I liked some of those games actually.
Yeah, we're gonna get those though, and it's gonna be like,
they're buggy. By the way, I played them recently.
Yeah. Chris, you playing anything else?
So I don't know if they'll link this or not in the description, but I played a game called Ebenezer and the Invisible World. I did a preview for Destructoid, and this game's interesting. So it's like you play as Ebenezer a year after the events of Christmas Carol, and you're trying to save the world from evil spirits and save Christmas, basically. But the cool thing is that it's a Metroidvania where you befriend spirits and you use their powers. So it's kind of a cool idea in a way. Like, for example, you meet this like child spirit who lets you jump to like higher platforms with the use of a balloon. The combat though is it's pretty bad, like, in my opinion. Like, for example, like your attacks don't interrupt the animations of your enemies, so it feels like you don't really have an impact on like how that on the combat.
Mm-hmm.
You can't interrupt their attacks. You feel like, oh, you're stuck, and like I took so much damage because of that. And also there's like an enemy that throws like grenades at you, and like the grenade is so big and the explosion is so big that it's hard to really progress through the level because of it. But like, I love the concept. The art style is quite stunning. It's like, it reminds me of like the old 80s and 90s kind of cartoon specials on TV.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking at your article on Destructoid right now.
Yeah,
and it definitely looks interesting. I want to see if does he jump? Does he have a jump?
Does he jump? Yes.
Okay,
yes, he does.
I just need to see that in action, because it's the idea
and also
of Metroidvania set in this world is just kind of like, I need to see that move.
London looks pretty cool, but like, I feel like if they don't change up the environments a lot, it could get old pretty quick. But like, man, there's this boss battle at the end of the Steam Next Fest demo, and it's in front of Big Ben. There's like this reflective kind of like ice on the ground, and the boss battle was actually pretty sick. So, yeah, I kind of enjoyed this game, but found it frustrating at the same time, just because the checkpoints were pretty far away from each other. But I love the concept, and I hope they improve upon it. It's a demo, so they could definitely do some stuff before the full release.
Yeah, definitely seems, and it is. Do you know when it's coming out exactly?
No idea. No, I don't think they have a date yet. It's probably going to be like Christmas season this year. Probably.
I would hope if it comes out in the spring, they drop the ball.
That's kind of weird, yeah. But like, we don't get many Christmas films or Christmas movies. Oh no, Christmas games. Sorry, my head doesn't work today. Apparently.
Yeah, no, we were talking about this earlier. Like, I only can name The Division.
Spider-Man Miles Morales is technically set in Christmas.
That's probably the best Christmas game of recent memory.
I think it is, yeah. And then there's a Dead Rising game set in Christmas, but it's cool to have games set in Christmas because it's one of my favorite seasons. And yeah, we need more. I want to play Christmas games in Christmas.
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer zombie shooter.
That was a game. Oh my goodness!
Where he shoots the laser out of his nose. There we go. Someone do that.
I'm sure like there's a crazy indie that would do that. Like, have you seen that game that you play as a cat on a skateboard and like a hoverboard or something? It's very violent. It's called Fury, I think.
Oh no, I have not.
I played that at PAX and it's ridiculous. It's so violent.
God, I gotta look into that.
Mm-hmm.
One more game. I'll talk. You got to send me a link to that because I gotta look that up. One more game that I've been playing is Starship Troopers Extermination. This is a game I got a code for. It is currently in early access. It's been in early access since mid-May. And this is a co-op first-person shooter set in the Starship Troopers universe. When they say it's early access, it feels very early access in terms of it's not really optimized yet. My frame rate was kind of going all over the place, despite having a decent computer. But the gameplay loop is interesting enough that like I worked against the frame rate being kind of poor because I love Starship Troopers. I love co-op games, and the way they have this broken down, there's a little bit of like strategy elements, like base building in the gameplay. Where anyone that is on your team can build different like structures, which could be like walls, towers, little bases to get ammo. And for the most part, the gameplay loop is just telling you to go to different extraction points or different points on the map, fight hordes of gigantic alien spiders, and just build bases, and then just keep moving until you have to get all of your team out and extracted at the end of every like mission. And it's like 16 players. I think it's like 4 teams of 4 or 4 squads of 4 that you can have. So there's a lot of people running around. There's a lot of spiders causing havoc, which is why the frame rate kind of takes a little bit of a beating from time to time. But I think there's like there's something here that is pretty fun. Of course, co-op games are always going to get a little bit of an edge. Like you I don't know if you're like this, Chris, but like if it's a co-op game, I feel like there's more fun that can be had despite the game in some instances.
Right.
And this definitely has that aspect of just like, oh, you know what? We're just kind of having fun bullshitting and just killing giant spiders. It has a little
Sometimes
bit of
you need that.
yeah, it's all you need. And there's gameplay elements in here that I want to see them refine over this early access period. I don't know how long it's going to be in early access, but they've already patched in some stability stuff and a little bit of extra features over time. So it's something that I'll probably be checking in every couple weeks anytime they add something to it or give updates. I'm hoping the frame rate can stabilize. Currently it's just on PC because it's an early access, but it is something that like I enjoyed despite the issues I ran into, because all the issues so far have just been technical issues, and I can deal with, you know, the frame rate being all over the place as long as I'm having some fun. And it's an early access, you know, you kind of make that agreement when you play an early access game of like, hey, this isn't finished, you're going to run into issues. No pun intended, you're going to have bugs, like a lot of bugs. And for the most part, I've been having a good time with it. I want to see the game expand more on like the building element just a little bit, because like, you know, sometimes it is just like, hey, build the specific thing, and like you can build a little bit of a fortification, but I just want to see that expanded more. But I know with 16 players, the game's going to need to stabilize more before they can have some real fun with that aspect. I'm hoping they can pull this together and find something really fun, because I think they have something here. But
yeah, it seems really fun from the gameplay I've seen. Like it looks really, really cool. I don't know if the Starship Troopers name like is going to help or hurt them.
I don't think it will hurt, but I don't really think it's going to help. Like, if that makes sense,
right.
You know, like,
right.
I don't think anyone that is a fan of Starship Troopers is going to be disappointed with it, but I don't know if that's going to bring a ton of people to this, if that makes sense.
Right. I think it looks like a cool game. Like, it's something I've been looking for experiences to play with my friends and all that, and I think that would be a good option for a lot of people. And the cat game I was mentioning is called Gory, Gori, Cuddly Carnage. That's what it's called.
I'm going to type that right now. Chris, I'm all out of games to talk about. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we go?
Have you talked about Final Fantasy 16 yet?
I have not. I've only played the demo, but you have dug into it, so I would want to hear your opinions as someone who does like Square Enix games for the most part.
Yeah, so I've played, so I got a review code, just want to put that out there, by Square Enix. But yeah, I've enjoyed Final Fantasy 16 so far. The story's interesting. I don't think they've put enough depth into the characters, but that might be because I've skipped some of the side missions that apparently have a lot of like story content, like surprisingly. But yeah, like I think one of the biggest issues is that like the side quests like don't give you that much like rewards, so that's the reason why I haven't been doing them. But yeah, the graphics are absolutely phenomenal. It's the reason why you want to own the PS5. Like, it looks absolutely gorgeous on screen, and it's like, to me, one of the first kind of true current gen games. You know, yeah, it looks absolutely gorgeous. Like, and it takes I like the story because it takes a few like interesting kind of like turns here and there that you don't expect. So it's actually quite riveting. to me, it doesn't feel like a Final Fantasy game yet. It doesn't have that levity you expect from the series, and it's more like Game of Thrones, that kind of vibe to it, like more deadly, more mature, more like, there's more blood, there's more swearing, cussing,
They definitely hit you with that in the demo of like, this isn't
Yeah,
your typical Final Fantasy game. And
it isn't.
From what I hear, like it does the Game of Thrones thing in good and bad ways. Like they take the good and bad from Game of Thrones in some aspects. And that's the only thing that makes me hesitant about picking it up right away.
Right. And I think it's not as good as Final Fantasy VII Remake, because I think that game, with its combat, it takes in like that traditional turn-based kind of gameplay and then mixes it with action RPG elements. So I think that's like the perfect kind of blend for the Final Fantasy series. But with this game, it feels a bit too basic to me. Like there's a few abilities you can lock here and there, but to me, like battles kind of feel repetitive to me in a way. And like there's not a lot of challenge to it. Like I've breezed through the game. Like I think I've only died 3 times in like 15 hours of gameplay.
Yeah.
So there's that to think about. But like I'm still enjoying it. I'm loving the ride. Clive is a good character, I think. He's relatable. I don't think the other characters are as interesting as him, though. One of the characters you meet, Jill, she really doesn't have that much depth to her. She's just there. She's just standing there, basically. So far in the game, anyway. So that's a bit disappointing.
And they named her Jill in a, fantasy game. It's very basic.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. It has more of an English kind of like vibe to it, the names are like English. There's Clive,
yeah.
There's Joshua,
Yeah, that cracked me up in the demo. I don't know, when I went there, it's like Joshua, and it's just like, okay.
Yeah. So it's not. It kind of worries me as a Square Enix fan, because it feels like they're trying to appeal to more Western audience, and I feel like it's losing itself in the process. So hopefully that's not the case with future games, but I don't know. What do you think? Like from the outside looking in, what do you think of Final Fantasy 16 as like its place in the Final Fantasy series? What do you think?
I mean, the story stuff is a little worrisome. I do like the aspect that they like cared so much about the lore that they added that lore feature where you can like pause the game at any time to like kind of catch up on it. Though that scares me off that they might have been so convoluted that they needed that feature, as opposed to like it's a nice feature to have. I don't know where it's going to fit overall. I'm also one of those people, I like Final Fantasy 13, and I think like Final Fantasy 8 and 9 would be like up there with like some of my favorites. Like I'm not the biggest 7 person.
Right.
So like I don't know quite where it fits. I hear like people say it feels more action adventure than RPG, which would interest me more in theory, but I see why some Final Fantasy fans are just like, oh, this doesn't quite feel right to me, which is all kind of building into why I'm kind of holding back from it.
I would wait for a sale, yeah.
Yeah, I'm basically waiting for a sale. Like it's something game. Yeah, it's something I need to play before the end of the year, just because I like to be like as informed as I can when I make my game of the year decisions. But it's definitely everything I'm hearing. The good sounds really great, but anything that's like middling to bad is definitely like holding me back.
Oh, there's also these summons called icons, and one of the main parts of the story is that you be like that there are some like people that turn into these monsters, right? Mm-hmm. So you're not actually summoning them; that they're actually a part of them, and there's like these battles that occur that feel like slow and like not that interesting to me. But the graphics are absolutely impressive. That I just don't care.
Yeah, you get to that point, you're just like, eh.
It could get boring after a little while. Like I've only played the game for 15 hours, right? So it could get a bit dull after a while. But we'll see. Something that surprised me though is that there's time skips in this game, and they come up like pretty quickly, which I was surprised by. So that's something else to talk about too. But like that's going into spoiler territory. I don't really want to get into
it's
that
not going to
too
be
much.
safe to spoil for
No.
a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, Chris. I think that kind of wraps us up. We went a little long, but we dug really deep into a bunch of different games, and that's kind of what I wanted to do this week. Especially we had like 2 common games that we could dive into, and I think we dove into AEW pretty well. And for the most part, it seems like we're enjoying everything we're playing right now, which I think is kind of rare.
It's a good time to be a gamer right now. It really is.
That right now it's like a really good summer of just a bunch of stuff that's coming out. And
Street Fighter 6 is also very good.
It's on my list, but I'm trash at fighters. But it's on my list of things
I feel like you can play it if you're trash though, because there's like a simple.
No, but I'm stupid, style. Chris. I will go into the competitive area of the game and then just
don't do that.
Anger myself. No, Chris, I can't stop myself. I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna hate myself. It's just like I can't play Overwatch casually, though I'm okay at Overwatch, so it's fine. But I will go into the competitive scene in Street Fighter and just curse the game,
right?
Because I'm stupid when it comes to that stuff. I'm just like, oh, you know what? I did pretty well in that story mode on easy. Let me hit the fucking competitive scene and just get destroyed. So, it's on my list, but it's definitely one of those things where it's just like, I gotta just wait and pick it up eventually. I probably won't hesitate when Mortal Kombat comes out later this year, but that's a different thing that has like a whole story mode that like, I'm not really worried about competitive Mortal Kombat.
Right.
But Chris,
the story mode's a Street Fighter 2, by the way.
Yeah, I know there's a story mode. I don't know. I associate more playing online against people because I did like doing that in like Street Fighter 4 back on the PS3 era. So, but that was before competitive got like super serious online.
Right.
Now, you know, it's like the main form of online competition for that game. So it's like I'll just get destroyed. But yeah.
Before I leave you though, I'm gonna say this one thing about gory, cuddly carnage, right?
Okay. Yeah, I just see the trailer description. Here.
One to slice creepy toys, one to dice mutated unicorns, one to play as a murder kitty on a death-dealing hoverboard. Great news! Gory, cuddly carnage is the game you've been waiting for.
Oh god, I need to see it, and I see there's a PlayStation trailer listed too. So
there's a demo on Steam too.
Yeah, I'll check this out. It looks adorable. I hope you can customize the cat.
I hope so too.
Yeah. All right, Chris, you'll leave us with gory, cuddly carnage. If you want to hit your socials one more time on the way out.
Sure. And I'm a bit rusty on podcasting, so I hope I did a good job today. But
you did fine.
Thank you. Just fine?
You did fine. It's Digital Days Gaming. It's the best we can hope for.
Gotcha. You can find me at Penwell Writes on Twitter. You can find my articles on Destructoid, GG Recon, and The Outer Haven. I also had a few articles up on VG 24/7 on some like Wii games like Mario Kart Wii and Super Smash Bros. Brawl. So go read those too. Yeah, that's basically it.
All right. And we will see everyone, or I'll see everyone next week, maybe possibly with Dave or someone else. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But till then, don't be a dick, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.